I've been asked the question as to how I do my website development using Affinity. That topic is actually quite vast, so I thought I'd put together just a few snippets of certain tools that I find work phenomenal for me. So the one tool that I use is Fireshot if I want to sample a web page. Now in this case, the actual sample that I have is an image. So I've got some black areas on the side here that I don't want to capture. But I'll edit that out in Affinity itself. Or you could just take the image itself and save the image. That's exactly what I did. When I saved the image, I didn't have the black reference areas around. But let me show you the tool I use. If you go to Fireshot, I say capture entire page and save. Now this pop-out menu that you have here is with the Pro version of this plugin for Chrome, and also you get a plugin for Firefox. But for the free version, you will have capture entire page, and it automatically will open it up in a graphic image for you, or you could save it as a PDF. The Pro version has many other features here which you really don't need. So I'm going to just click Save. And I am going to save that. I've already made a sample there, so I'll just save that. Okay. So I'll go to Affinity, Open, and then I'll click, okay, that one on top there is the actual JPEG that I saved, but I'm not going to use that. I'm going to show you the one where I've done the full screen grab, because in some cases the sample you pull off the website might be, much longer, and it's not an image. You've got to do an image capture of the screen. So if I go there, I am just going to unlock this layer and see if I can, oops, no, I'll have to do a crop on this. So select the crop tool and we pull it out there. And there we go. And now the canvas we were working on is now a bit too big for what we are using. So instead of grabbing the canvas and trying to size it, the better way I find, an excellent tool in Affinity, is you can copy this. You go to File and you say New from Clipboard. There we go. Full size, and then I go close this one because I don't need that as a size. However, now I recommend strongly that you always work with artboards. So we've just kind of thrown away our base that we were working from. So I want to create an artboard from this particular design. I'll select it and then go to the artboard tool. You'll have options on top. Just choose Insert Artboard and it will insert an artboard to the exact size that you're using. You look on the right there and maybe you go back. There you're just seeing it's on a normal layer. It says background pixel. So when I go to artboard, say Insert Artboard, it changes over to artboard to the exact size of the image that I have here. And I'm going to rename this as background reference. Okay, so you can create a second artboard on the side where you are going to design the actual design and have the reference on a artboard next to it. I work on the artboard. It just works a bit better for me because I can reference better. But if you were going to do that, because you've created an artboard now, if you create a new artboard, it automatically will use the dimensions that you've last used. So you'll go to artboard and you'll go to Insert Artboard, and there you'll have a copy of it on the side. So you could start here and start designing as a reference to see what's going for what here. That's one choice. You can decide to do that or not. I'm going to design on top of this area. Let's just remove that second artboard. The second thing that I think you need to identify is, besides using an artboard, is that everything we're going to do has to be on layers. The reason for that is that you then keep it clean. If you're busy building, you can build the header areas and menu areas in one layer. The slider area here can be in another layer. This area here in another layer. And so we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. Now, you see all these icons up here. If every sort of layout that you're going to do, you're going to have to recreate these icons and find a JPEG or PNG to use in there, it becomes quite a bit of a mission. I can recommend you going to a site called FreePic. FreePic has got some awesome vector art in it. So if you can go and you want to say web icons, you will find tons of different ones, and they all are vector art that you can basically download. So you'll go in, you'll download it, and then you can use it in your project. You've just got to give credit to the actual authors of it, which I feel is quite fair. In which way you give credit, that's up to you. So if we wanted to go with this, we'll open it. There are certain sort of instructions that you have along the way. Free download, and these instructions here says you must credit the author, and you could create a link back to the author's site and so forth, or to this particular site. It's up to you, or you can just click free download. There we go. Okay, so these are social media icons that we can use, and let's open that folder. I am just going to expand it here so I don't hold you too long on that. And there we've got, because we're using Affinity, the EPS picks up on that. So I'll just click on that file. And yes, let's open it up with Affinity. Pretty much there we have the icons that are there. Again, usually they come in, depending on how it was designed, they're grouped together. So you can ungroup them along the way, or you could just select this group. I'm going to say copy, and I'll bring it across here, and then I would right click and paste it here. Okay. Oops, just make that selection and move it out into this area. I don't know if I've made the full, I don't think I've made the full selection, but anyhow, the idea is there that we then have these icons that we have accessible, and we can always then click on ungroup them and reference them. Say, I'm going to say ungroup all over there, and say I wanted to use this icon here. I'm going to group that together. I could decide to bring that into that space and use that icon over there. Okay, and then I know I'll use vector art. So I'll use this one on its own just to place them across all of them there. I'm not going to use all the icons and get into specific detail. It's just to show you functionality. Again, it's got a nice little drop area, but this itself is all vector art in there. So we have the artboard that we're working on. We are not going to work with the second artboard as a reference. We're going to be working on this artboard. So the first thing that I do is I create a block out layer, which is basically a square area, not a square, but a rectangle that I'm going to place over this existing artwork so that I can create a white background. So when I want to see the reference, I put it to fully opaque. Let me just show you. First of all, let's create the layer. You have add layer, which is for vector art, and then you have pixel layer. So if you're using images and you drag in an image, it usually will create a pixel layer. So we will work with add layer, which is a vector layer. And let's have a look there. That is the artboard, okay, the background reference. So the layers will be on the artboard or shown as we're seeing it here. So I'm going to name this blockout. Okay, and onto that blockout layer, I am going to take a rectangle and just draw it right across there. And my color of choice is white because that's a kind of a neutral. We're working in there. So when we start working with design work, we can actually take the opacity down, see what's happening underneath, and use that as a sort of tracing area. So for purposes of us now, we don't need it to be opaque. We are going to just pop it totally to opacity down to 0. And then the blockout layer, I am going to also just put a lock onto it so that I don't inadvertently move it around. Now you can ask, where's the lock here on the layer? What it's putting it on is the actual area that I'm functioning on, that I've got selected, that it locks there. Okay, So if I want to lock the entire layer, I make sure that I'm selected on the entire layer. You can disable that and the entire layer will be locked there. Okay, so we have a layer for the blockout layer. So my first step is that I create layers for the areas that I'll be editing. And if I look at an image like this, the top area with the header and the menu would be one layer. The image slider would be on another layer. This icon and text would be on another layer, and the bottom projects on another layer. So we're basically looking at 1, 2, 3, 4 layers plus our blockout layer. So let's start off with the first one. We're going to put that there, and I'll put it in from the bottom up, just because it's more convenient to create them in that way. So I'll start with projects, which is this bottom area. Then the next one is going to be icon and text. You can come up with more original labels. The next one will be slider. And remember, although I'm calling it slider and going to put an image in there, these little navigation buttons and the text all will come in that layer. The next one will be, let's call that top and menu. Okay, so pretty much we have our layers sorted out. So first the artboard, then create the layers. Now the other thing that we need to do is, if we are going to be using this color palette, which means if we look at this image, we are going to use these colors that are on this website. Using samples from them, we can create our own swatch by making selections, going here and going and saying create a palette, create your own palette, etc., etc. But the best way that Affinity affords you to do that is to make a palette from this image. So if we're going to use this as our template then of colors, then we have to get the colors from this template. If we're going to use another image, we can use it. Or if we just use other color palettes that are available, etc., and swatches. In my case, I like the colors that are used in here, and I want to extract them out as a swatch that I want to use. So I go into the little dialog of the swatches, and I go down to create a palette from an image. Now it doesn't take the palette from the image on the screen here. It allows you to load one. So you're not bound to actually bring it into the program and then create the palette from it. You can get a remote image and work with it that way. So if I select an image, I am going to use this one here. But let's see if I was going to design it with total different colors. I'm going to find a different image. Say I was going to use the palette of this Google Photos as my reference. So all the colors in here is what I'm going to use. I'll say open that, and automatically it brings out the colors in here based on the fact that I've asked for 5 colors. There's pretty much more samples that I can get out here. So I'm going to say 12, and I'll say preview, and there it brings all the lovely colors out. If I go 5, click preview, it's basically taking from the lightest colors right down to the darkest color, but giving me 5 options that I can find there. So sometimes you need to go with a bit of more color selections, and that would include the colors that you have there. So pretty much we have the orange. We don't have a yellow. Maybe we should go to 15. Let's see what it gives us. There we've got a yellow, a orange, a red. This one pretty much represents most of the colors in this palette here. So the number of colors is quite essential to include everything. The other thing is also you have some here that are very similar, although this one in this corner at the bottom is a kind of tone of the one above it. These ones are kind of similar, but you can edit them out once you create the actual palette. Now, if we look here at the bottom, there's a selection here to make this specific swatch available to the entire application. So it will be available for Affinity going forward. So if you're doing other projects, you could use this also, which I don't want to do. I just want to use it specifically for this project. If you want to make it attach only to the document, that's the one I'm going to select. Or if you have a current palette open and you want to add it to that, you can select the bottom. So I'm going to select document and I'm going to say create. There we have it over here. And the point that I mentioned earlier is that if these colors, if I don't want that, I can actually go in and say delete and delete and pretty much delete that one. And with this one, if I feel that one needs to be kind of totally white, I could edit it that way. Okay, but I do have a few selections for white if I choose to go that way. So here I have my color swatch, which is made up from the colors that I have in that Google photo image. So my creation here is going to use these. And why do I make the swatch? Often, if a thing is being professionally put together, they usually design it with certain colors that match with each other. Else, if you don't have colors that are matching with each other, you often would result with sit with the result that the website looks very strange because the color maps are not really suiting each other. You have a bright green and a bright yellow or something like that. So it's good to use a professionally set up swatch or use a professionally set up logo or website that have colors in that you like to extract it for your own swatch as such. Okay, then just another thing, if you were going to use these swatches or this swatch for different artboards, if you had say 10 artboards and you were working and you were going to use this orange color on all the artboards, it might be wise to select it and go to this little icon that says add the color to palette as a global color. When you click that, it puts a little tag at the bottom. So it leaves the actual one and it puts a tag there. And the global color means that if you use this global color on this artboard and 10 other artboards, when you make a change here, you make it once, it will change across the entire spectrum. Whereas if it's not global, when you make a change here on the orange one that you put, it won't change on all the artboards. So you can go individually through and say, okay, make that also a global color, etc. The global one will have this little triangle at the bottom. Okay, so that's as far as it happens with swatches. Now we are going to start getting into designing the little components. Now I'm not going to go into high-end duplication of everything for the sake of time, but I'll give you the principle that we're going to be using. So let's start up with, we're on the top layer. So let's start working with that. So make sure I'm on the top layer and then I start creating. So I'm going to go in there and we pull it across there. And if you're working to the pixel, you can, when you put the selection down, you go down to transform. If it's not showing, you click on transform here. And here you can see the actual pixel value. So we've got the height at 27,3 and most likely it would just be 27 or even 28. So you can type it in there and make precise movements with your actual layers. In our case, we are not going to export each of these sections as slices to use in a website. It's to give us a visual representation. Okay, so we've got that in that area, and try and maybe just finish the area as you are using it when it comes to whether there's text or so. So I'm going to select that and I'm going to go to its opacity just to drop it down so I can see what's underneath it. In this area, we're going to have a little web browser area. So I'll go over that. And that is maybe a light color. Also, if we want to take this and round up the edges, we can select the area and come up here. There's different ways of doing it. There's a corner tool, but I find out corner tool, you can work on individuals or select the corners and round them off. Or you can just use the corner tool that pops up here. You go there, you can change the corners to be different shapes. It can be square on, but the one we're looking at is rounded. And the percentage is maybe we go for 10%. And if we look at that, it will create a nice little soft round area over there. Okay, and the same applies here. If we wanted to do these, we'll go for the little circles. Now remember, you've got to look this way to see where you are working on. Okay, make sure that you're always on this particular layer. When you are functioning, you want to be on the top layer as you're adding. So if you feel you've done something and you're not sure, you go to this and you see, okay, yes, that is on the top layer. So when you're done, make sure you're on the top layer, and then we can go and create our little circles here. Okay, and I'm going to drop in maybe that as orange. Alt and pull away to copy, and then I'm press Shift to constrain it. What is that? That is yellow. It's possibly that color. And same thing here. This one is green, so it's probably that color. And then, of course, you can put the little X's and that in there, but my purpose, that's not necessary. So we've created all of this on this layer, and this background layer that we're working on here is a gray color, but it's got a gradient in, so we can go and take the gradient tool and just drag across it. Gradient tool is so awesome in this program. So now we want to have a look and see what that looks like. So there's a lot of stuff in the background. Best way to do it is go to the blockout layer, and just to check out in the blockout layer we have that rectangle, and we go and sort out the opacity, push it all the way up to see what we have designed here. This possibly has to be a different shade of gray, so maybe we choose that as a gray, or even maybe a lighter color along the way. Maybe accentuate the corners to 20 so it looks a bit better. Okay, then the top area here also probably do the corners. 25 is a bit too much, maybe make that 15. Okay, so point is now you're getting the idea that you've got that, and you've used the bottom area as a layout there, and it's all on a particular layer that you're working. So now we can go back to the rectangle area, and we can take the opacity down again so we can see what we're doing below. Okay, next we've got to make sure that we are on that layer before we start doing anything else. So we'll come here to this particular text box. Same thing applies. We're on the layer, making sure of that. Go and select. Oops, we've made a move there. Wrong selection. There we go. So we put that block in there. Okay, so in this case here now I'm going to have that, and I just want to have single, make sure I'm on the layer still, single lines. Click there, keep shift, constraint, click there. So I'm going to just make a thin, maybe make it 0.2 line, and I want that line to be a gray color. Let's see what we've got there. So that's like a little thin gray line. Maybe make it a little bit more gray. So if I wanted to do that, I could go Alt and put them out there. Alt, put it out there, Alt. And then I could select these and just use the Align tool. So I can use the space horizontal. When I click on that, it will auto-distribute. So it auto-distributes the partitions that I have inside there. Or I could disable auto-distribute and type in the actual pixels I want to. But when I'm done here, I've got to click OK. If you click outside here, it will just jump back to where it was originally. You've got to select OK. The reason for that is because you could do a lot of modifications, and the program wants to know when you are totally satisfied, you need to acknowledge that. So you say OK. So with those selected, I'm going to just pop down the transparency a bit so they're not so excessive. Okay. Then these little icons that go in here, we can go put them in. Same thing here, drop in the telephones. I'm not going to go through all of that. If you want to recreate a logo here, it's a matter of making sure we're on that same group. I am going to start drawing a little area. Let's see what we have. Okay, if this logo is important to the clients, the actual logo, then you must just make sure you have everything right as far as colors and that go, because you can't afford to, you can mess up on anything else, but the client always is very touchy about their logos. So in this case, this is not really the logo I'm worried about. So I will create a area, and what color I need to use here. Let's see the samples that are available. Let's pull that out. Is that a sort of a greenish blue color? Okay, if I think I don't have that in my swatch, it's as simple as going to the actual selection tool, selecting there, getting that idea, which pretty much is this color here. So I think we do have it. And just select there. No, not exactly. So let's get across there, zoom into that actual color. And from that, I'm going to say, let's just create a global swatch from that, because we'll be using it again. And then we can do the actual design there. Make sure we're on the layer. There. I'm going to make this a little bit thicker so I can see what's going on. And I can go do all of that, but that would be unwise of me to do. What I will do is use one of these parametric objects. Yeah, we're coming to another sort of exciting space of design. So I'm going to use the spy tool. I don't know if it will really work for what we want to do. But a parametric object is an object that's created these shapes, but they have little handles on where you could do precise measurements with them. You could even type in the information. Like if I'm selected here, to be able to see the handles, I go onto the actual parametric area. When I click there, you'll see these red handles. So when I start making movements, you can see these. And I could also just type it in here if I do these measurements. Okay, once you're happy with it, you can convert it to an outline, like a normal vector object that you have. Or you could leave it as this parametric object so you can dynamically change it later on. So in this case, I want to create an object that is able to sort of come from those points, which I have there pretty much, and then I want to be able to have it go to a point. So at this particular point, I think I kind of have what I'm looking for in the shape. If I'm happy in that way, what I can do is I go to, sometimes it's stuck away here because of the number of things in the screen resolution. I click Convert to Curves. Now it's taken that object and converted into conventional curves that I can work with. I will take that and move that over there. Okay, and then I'm going to just clear up the inside, make it transparent. And the outside I will use, oops, let's put that there, that as a color. And there pretty much we've created that. So if I select there and select that, let's move it to the side. We've created that object. And how we got to that outline, you've seen I've used that pie tool, got it nicely aligned, and then converted it to an outline and just used the actual node selection tool and pulled it out that way. Okay, so there's 101 ways of doing these things. That's just one of the ways that I've chosen to do it. So if we put in that logo, and I am going to use the artistic text tool. I'm going to type here now. What is nice is that I can start on the top, left mouse button, click and drag, and check out the actual height if I want to use the exact sort of font size. And we can say this is, I'm going to just say medical suppliers. Okay, and then of course the usual, when you want to change it to being bold, etc., your normal editing still works with everything else. Go bold. What I love is the feedback immediately when you hover over these things. Okay, so say medical suppliers is what we want to create. Okay, and then I'll just roughly go over the menu areas just to show you again the alignment tools, how nicely that works. So I'd go in, artistic tool, go in and check the size. Right, we've got that. Now what I do is a lot of people will type it in and then give spaces and type and give spaces, but then you don't have control over the individual parts. So I'll create that. Again, just glance over that you are in the top layer, top menu layer. I'll Alt and drag out and then press Shift to constrain. Okay, do the same. And for me to pan across, all I do is press middle mouse button, hold it down, and I'm able to pan without any modifying keys on the keyboard. Okay, and that's the last one. But yeah, okay, now I want to make a left mouse button selection, but I'm moving the entire image when I go over. Go Control Z. So what I do now is I select the area I'm working on. And here's another brilliant tool. If I want to go exactly to that layer that has just moved now, I want to actually go lock it so that I don't inadvertently move it. When I select on it, I can right click and say find the layer in the panel. And then in our layers panel, it jumps immediately to that, which is actually a brilliant tool. So I'll then put a lock on that. So now if I go and I go make my selection over here, if I come in here and I want to make a selection, I'm not grabbing the whole background because it's locked. So I have this selected. I am now going to go to the alignment tool. When I click align, it pushes it out accordingly, giving it equal kind of space. It auto distributes the actual thing. And usually that is a good selection that you could use. Again, let me just show you the auto distribute. It puts on 0 because that's where we start, and then everything crumbles up again. So if I have to say 100 pixels, it's going to give that space, or I go to 30 pixels. So it's separating it by the pixels that I put in. Auto distribute kind of works most of the time. Now here again, the point is, as I mentioned earlier, is if I click off here now, it all will go back to where it was before because I haven't accepted the setting. So if I go in there and I make that selection, leave auto on, I say OK, and then it accepts that change. Okay, so here we're going to have the icons, etc. in there. Now comes to the part that it's a new sort of understanding of how you're able to put in an image into this area. Often if you drop an image in here, you've got to bring it in and then try and resize it and work it through. Affinity Designer has a brilliant tool. Let's get onto the layer, which is the slider layer. Okay, so on the slider layer, I am going to now go and choose a rectangle tool. I'll zoom in there and can basically just do it till there, and I can let go because all I'm going to do is create this rectangle across this way. Okay, so that's where we're going to do it. Now I'm going to fill this rectangle in with a color so that I just know that's where the block is. Now what is the purpose of this block that I put in here where I want to put the image in? This is where the genius comes in of Affinity. What we do is we go and we find the file. We can go in here and say place the file, or in our toolbar I've got a little icon there that says place image tool. I'll use that. So what we'll do is make sure we're on the layer, slider layer there. Make sure we on that layer, and we'll go in to place tool and go and find an image that we want to put there. Let's choose something. Let's say we're going to use this image, web image here. So I'm going to place the tool. Now I don't have to grab onto that spot or whatever it is. I'm using that just as a reference, so I can start outside the area and just start dragging the tool across. Okay, and I'm able to move it. Now what I want to do is just that area, that square area that we had, is what we want to have shown through that area. I don't want this whole image to show. So now I brought it in here. There's one way of doing this, that I can take the actual rectangle area here and I can drag it onto this image, just onto the right hand side, and this rectangle will act as a mask to mask it out. If I do that, can you see this little blue line? And there you can see it's masking that area out beautifully. But I don't want to do that. So what I suggest you do as a better option is that when you select this and you're about to place the object, you go onto the top area here where it says Insert Inside Selection. You make sure you click that, and once that's checked, you go to the Place Object. Now look at what beautifully happens. You bring in the same image, you drag it across, and as you're dragging it across, look what happens. It basically brings in, and you can move that image in the background as much as you want to. So you go, okay, that section of the image is what I want to show through that area. So it automatically creates a mask when you click this Insert Inside Selection. It creates the mask for you. So that job of dragging the actual shape onto the image to create the mask is done automatically for you when you put that in there. And that's awesome. I love that. So if we can see now, I'm going to just go down to the blockout layer. Just see if I can go onto that rectangle and up the opacity. Let's see what we've got there now. Okay, so this is what we've got that we've created already. Okay, so we have a border on top, we have this area, etc. Okay, so let's switch that back on quickly, or drop the opacity there. And then we're going to go through these bottom ones here just to show you if we're going to use this icon in that same space. Okay, so I'm going to go in here and I make sure that I'm on which layer. Let's make sure we're on the icon text layer. Right on. So we're going to go for a little circle. Let's see. These are constraints that I'm using. When you press the modifying keys, either the shift or the control. So I'm going to just get in there with approximately that size. And again, if you want it to be precise, you can go type at the bottom here, which is most likely 60 by 60. We'll go 60 pixels by 60 pixels. And there we have it there. Okay, so onto that, I'm going to take this particular object. I'm going to zoom in there, and actually, you know what, instead of creating the circle here, I think we will just use these as the full-on icons. I'm going to go Alt, drag out, Shift to constrain, Alt, drag out, Shift to constrain. Alt, drag out, Shift to constrain. Okay. And yes, we will have different icons in these areas, but for our purposes, let's stick to duplicating the same thing. So if we're going to go here, where are we? Are we on the proper layer? Let's see. If I go there, I say find on layer. Where are we? All of these groups are somewhere. They're not on that layer. So I'm going to drag that onto the icon and text layer. See, it's always important to keep an eye on where these things are. That's icon and text layer. So have we popped it into there? Yep. If I switch this layer off, icon and text, yep, it should take it away. So it's important to just occasionally look at the layers so that you don't mistakenly put it into other layers and then you have issues with finding stuff later. So I'm on the icon text layer. Another feature I'm going to show you now that you'll enjoy. So artistic will go in the same thing. I'm going to say, let's type in responsive design. Okay. And I'm going to show you something very exciting now about the text over here. If you click the text box and go to text frame, this is where you draw a box where it will be filled with text. Now, usually when you design websites, you're going to go to the website, the internet, and get some lopsum ipsum dollar sit a met text that is basically copy and paste in here. Affinity has given you a drop down button in the text area that says insert filler. Boom, you put it in there and it's there. You can change fonts, everything. But the nice thing about this is if you want to design it with the text box being longer, it automatically fills or removes as you stretch the box. Select this area. Let's make a selection of this text and come in by the fonts. There we'd be able to add a bit of smaller fonts, so forth. Okay, so what I want to do is take this text and duplicate it across this way. So in essence, I naturally wouldn't do that and duplicate the one section. I'll actually complete the one column, and you could group it if you wanted to, but I'll leave it like that. Alt, drag, and shift to constrain. Okay, maybe we should make it into a group, because then when we align stuff, it will work out better. Alt, shift, constrain. Same thing there. Same thing there. And that pretty much should be okay. Or we could go and select and then do the same thing with the auto align and auto distribute. Say okay, and we have it in there. Then finally, I'm not going to do these titles at the bottom. I'm going to just do the project section here. We're going to go to the project, which is the last one. And we'll pull up the artistic text and do, let's call that projects. Okay. Basically size out the text like we want to and edit the characters, etc. If I want a line over here at the bottom, go there, click there, constrain, put in a line. Let's see the thickness of the line here. Okay, we want it there. And the edges I want it to be squared off. And the color I'm going to choose is, let's use that color. Yep. Okay, we'll use that global color. So we have that in place. And then the same would apply for the images here. What we'll do is we're on the projects layer, go to the areas, and we'll just draw out. We'll drag out, same, constrain, drag out, same, constrain. Select all three of them. I'm going to just remove the outlines of them. Don't need the outlines. I'm just using the boxes as references. We go in and we do the auto align. And now we can consider bringing in images. So we select the first box, select the insert inside, and place. Okay. Let's place this picture and drag it from where we want to. Got it there, kind of position it, size it. Okay, next one we go, select there, place. Let's choose a different image. Okay. Okay, this one is basically a portrait image, so it doesn't fill up the whole area, but that's fine. Third one, we can use the place tool again, and let's find a different picture. Let's use this logo, or use this desktop image. Let's put it out there. Oops, can you see what we've done? We haven't selected that area, so it just places it here. Let's delete that. Select that area there and go to place. Or let's use this place that we previously used. Come. Wallpaper, drag across. Let's make it smaller and drag it there. Okay. So pretty much that's what we have there, and then we can go to our blockout layer and we can just turn up the opacity so that gives us a full white back area. that's basically how we get to lay out a site, and keeping the structures there, getting your layout there. So if we go through as a synopsis, just to show you here, these images, you could decide that you want to build up, borders around them. You could decide to edit the pictures, create rounded corners, etc. If you choose tools, you can create the rounded corners. You wanted to, let's select this one. If you wanted, you go to corner tool here. You can select there, keep shift down, select all of these. So you can edit, let go of the shift, and you could edit it like you want to. It now becomes normal tools that you edit with. You can also put drop shadows and start adding effects onto it. So if we had to choose that one and put an outer shadow on it, let's put the offset there, density and a bit of radius. Okay. So all the other settings that you can have, from bevel to emboss settings, everything, I'm going to close that. You can actually place onto these objects when you're editing. So you can use the usual visual smartening up tools if you want to. So I hope this has been of value to you and that it improves your workflow going forward. Have a fantastic day and God bless.